Hi, I'm Denise, and welcome to Math for All, where everyone can learn more about math. You have learned many, and may I emphasize many, rules and techniques for adding and subtracting fractions. Now it's time to absorb some new, and in my opinion, easier and more fun steps for multiplying fractions. Before we get started, please go to my website, mathforall.net, and print out the notes for this lesson so you can follow along. If you can get your hands on some colored pencils or thin markers, go grab those because it makes your paper prettier and it will help keep things straight when we start slashing. I'll start by giving you the rules for multiplying fractions, then I'll show them in action. First step, turn any mixed numbers into improper fractions. Remember, I call it doing the circle, and it's pretty fun. Second, if you have any whole numbers, put the invisible 1 on the bottom. Third, slash anything that can be reduced from the top and the bottom. This part is my favorite because I feel like I'm on a hunt to get rid of big numbers. I think you'll like it too. Fourth, multiply across the top and bottom. This step is nice too, as long as we don't have super large numbers. Lastly, we check our fraction answer and make it pretty. Change any improper fractions into mixed numbers and reduce if needed. This last step should look familiar, as we always need to check before we give a final fraction answer. Now that you have the list of steps in multiplying fractions, let's do our first example. 16/49 times 7/40. Now, we don't just start multiplying. We can make this a lot easier if we just follow my steps. Also remember, we don't need to get a common denominator for multiplying, so we don't need to worry about that. Yippee! Our first step is to change any mixed numbers into improper fractions. There's none here, so we get to skip that step. Next, we check for any whole numbers. None of those either, so we are going to move on. Next thing is to slash anything that can be reduced from the top and the bottom, but not straight across. Check out what we have. I'll start with the 16. Notice the 40 over here? They're both divisible by 4, so we're going to go for it. Here's the fun part. Slash them, then divide them both by 4 and put the new numbers next to them. Here we go. Slash the 16. Since 16 divided by 4 equals 4, the new number is 4 here. Down to the 40. Slash him. 40 divided by 4 equals 10, so my new number is 10 on the bottom. I'm going to get another color as I continue to slash to keep things from getting too confusing. Now we'll look at all the numbers again and see if we can keep going. Here I see the new 4 and 10 I just wrote. They're both divisible by 2, so I will slash them and write the division answers. 4 divided by 2 equals 2. 2 goes here. 10 divided by 2 equals 5, and then 5 goes here. Do you see how we can do one more? Those other two numbers that haven't been slashed better watch out. 7 and 49 are both divisible by 7. Slash the 7. 7 divided by 7 equals 1. Slash the 49. 49 divided by 7 equals 7. I think that's it for slashing. See how much fun it was? And even better, our original problem has transformed into something much simpler. Now it's 2/7 times 1/5. The next thing to do is to multiply across the top and the bottom. 2 times 1 equals 2. Over 7 times 5 equals 35 for an answer of 2/35. Checking it, we see that it is fully reduced and proper, so it's our final answer. Fantastic! Here's another example to walk through. 5 and 3/5 times 4 and 1/6. Our first step in our instructions is to change any mixed numbers into improper fractions. Do not, I repeat, do not let me see you leave these and just multiply the numbers and the fractions. The reason it won't work is because the 5 needs to get multiplied by both the 4 and the 1/6, and the 4 by the 5 and also the 3/5. When we go into improper form, they're all together and we don't have to worry about it. So I'll clean up the board so we can get started. Poof! Now it's time to start in your notes. We get to do the circle. First one, start at the bottom, go around and multiply by this big 5, equals 25 here. I keep going around to add 25 plus the 3 on top, equals 28, which becomes our numerator. Bring over the bottom 5 here for 28/5. We get to do the circle for the 4 and 1/6. You know the drill. 6 times 4 equals 24. Take that, 24 plus 1 equals 25 on top. Bring over the 6 for 25/6. Now we're at 28/5 times 25/6. We don't have any whole numbers, so let's move on. Before we get all crazy and start multiplying, don't forget that we get to slash, which is great because I don't really want to multiply 28 times 25 across the top. I'm hoping that the numbers get smaller. Let's see. Look at the top and bottom numbers to see if they can be reduced. Right away, I notice 25 on top and 5 on the bottom. I'm going after them because they're both divisible by 5. 25 slash. We divide him by 5, so now he's a 5. Mr. 5 here on the bottom, he turns into a 1, since 5 divided by 5 equals 1. We assess the other numbers, and now I'm going to go after the 28 and 6. They're both divisible by 2. 28 divided by 2 equals 14, so we slash and transform him into a 14. 6 slash divide by 2 equals 3. This looks amazing. Look at all this work. Nothing else to slash, so my new problem is 14 over 1 times 5/3. Going across the numerators, 14 times 5. Well, I don't know my 14 math facts, so I need to stack them and multiply. Let's do that over here. Wow, more colorful math on this board. 14 times 5. 4 times 5 equals 20. Bring down the 0, carry the 2. Now these two, 1 times 5 equals 5, then plus the 2 equals 7, for a total of 70. At least the denominators are easier. 1 times 3 equals 3. My answer is 70/3. We must check our answer before we circle it and move on. It is improper, so let's fix it. More math here. 70 divided by 3. Once again, I don't know my 3 math facts up that high, so I'm going to do long division. 70 in the box, 3 on the outside. Start with 7 divided by 3. I always think if I have 7 candies and 3 friends, how many do they each get? The answer is 2, which goes on top. Subtract 3 times 2, which is 6, for an answer of 1. Remember, next we bring down the next number of 0. Now we're at 10 candies and 3 friends. How many do they get? 3 each. 3 goes up. 3 times 3 goes down, so I subtract 9 for a remainder of 1. 13 remainder 1. This tells us that 70/3 in a mixed number is a big 13, remainder 1 on the top, 3 on the bottom, for 13 and 1/3, our final answer that gets to be circled and submitted. I guess before we leave this one, we should really admire our work. It looks like a lot of crazy math stuff, but it wasn't so bad as we were going through. Great job. Let's do one more quick one. 5/8 of 56. You may be thinking, hey, this is supposed to be multiplying fractions. What's going on here? This is a word problem. But all we have to do is to turn this guy into beautiful math so we know what to do. An important bit of information is that in math, the word of almost always means to multiply, so we can just rewrite this as multiplication. 5/8 times 56. We don't have any mixed numbers this time, so we don't get to do the circle. But we have this whole number of 56. Well, every number has this invisible 1 underneath it, like this. We don't normally write that, which is nice because it would be a lot of extra work to write it under every number, but it is there and it will help us when we multiply. Now we get to slash where we can. I notice that both this 8 here and the 56 are both divisible by 8. 8 divided by 8 is 1. 56 divided by 8 is 7. My new simplified problem is 5 times 7 on the top equals 35. 1 times 1 on the bottom equals 1 for 35 over 1. And math people don't want you to write the answer like that. They want to know that you know that it just equals 35. 5/8 of 56 equals 35. Awesome. You've learned what you need to know about multiplying fractions, but I'd like to show you in a couple of different ways what's really going on. The first one is 4 times 3/10. Remember that multiplication is just repeated addition. So this is 3/10 added 4 times. 3/10 plus 3/10 plus 3/10 plus another 3/10. You can see why multiplication is so handy. We don't want to write and write and write. We do know how to add these though. We have common denominators, so we just add the numerators. 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3 equals 12, for a total of 12/10. I won't even simplify it. Now let's multiply the way that you've learned. 4 times 3/10. I put the 1 underneath the 4 and multiply across the top and the bottom. 4 times 3 equals 12 on the top, the 3's we added 4 times before. And 10 times 1 equals 10 on the bottom. Pretty cool. Now with pictures. You may or may not remember that we can figure out multiplication with a grid. Like if we color in 6 squares across and 8 squares down, like in this grid, the amount of overlapped squares is the multiplication answer. 48 squares here are colored in purple. In the same way, we can color in overlapping rectangles to see the answer to fraction multiplication. I realize this isn't a real practical method for figuring out problems, but you should understand what's going on, and maybe it will help some of you who appreciate the pretty pictures. We'll use grids to show 3/8 times 2/5. I have a grid here that across the top is cut into 8s. And up and down is cut into 5 equal pieces. Now the fun part, coloring in boxes. To color in 3/8 across the top, we will color 3 of the 8 pieces straight down like this. I'm liking this yellow. Go get another color if you can. I'll choose blue, and let's go across to get the 2/5. Since it's already cut into fifths, we get to color 2 of them across. So let's shade 2/5 of the overall shape like this. The answer to the multiplication is where they overlap. Notice the yellow plus blue equals green, doing a little art learning here too. The number of green boxes are 6, and the total number of boxes are 40, for an answer of 6/40. Remember that this is just a visual representation of what we do when we multiply fractions. I hope you enjoyed a little bit of relaxing coloring time while you were still learning math. In today's lesson, you have learned and practiced the steps in multiplying fractions, as well as seen some different ways of representing them. Great work! Make sure you practice what you've learned so it will get easier and easier. Head over to mathforall.net for worksheets tailored to this lesson and keep learning more about math.